What's up, YouTube? Before I get into the video, let me remind you that if you like my content, hit that like and subscribe button. And also, if you feel the need to support me, hit me up on my Patreon at patreon.com/uncommonramen, capital U, capital R. I do all of this in my free time, so any amount of support can help me bring more of this content to you more often. Okay, today we are going to be taking a look at Narci Fable Singer. This was a backup commander in the Enchantments Hand of Erebos precon, and it piqued my interest because not only do I enjoy Enchantress decks in general, but I really love the concept of saga decks. I've already done a saga deck with Setsuki, Living Lore. There's a video up for that. So I felt like I wanted to try and see what adding black would do for this, and not to mention just the differences in abilities between Setsuki and Narci. So let's take a look at Narci. She is 1, a white, a black, and a green for a 3/3 with lifelink. Whenever you sacrifice an enchantment, you get to draw a card, and whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the saga's mana value. So as your sagas go through their normal lifespan, you will get some value off of them when you sacrifice them, not only because you get to draw a card because they get sacrificed, but also because they deal damage equal to their mana value and you gain life. So we're going to look at the creatures and see how we complement that. There we go. Starting with Enchantments Hand of Erebos. Enchantments Hand of Erebos is 2, a white, a black, and a green for a 4/4 with menace. Other enchantment creatures you control have menace, and whenever Enchantments enters the battlefield or attacks, exile up to 1 target non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 3/3 black zombie creature in addition to its other types. We've got Archon of Sun's Grace, 2 and 2 white for a 3/4 with flying and lifelink. Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. With Constellation, whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. We got Calyx Guided by Fate for 1, a green, and a white. It is a 2/2 Constellation. Whenever Calyx Guided by Fate or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Whenever Calyx or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control. Do this only once each turn. We got Composer of Spring for 1 and a green, a 1/3. It has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 6 or more enchantments, instead, you may put a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. We got Demon of Fate's Design for 4 and 2 black. It is a 6/6 with flying and trample. Once during each of your turns, you may cast an enchantment spell by paying life equal to its mana value rather than it paying its mana cost. For 2 and a black, you can sacrifice another enchantment. Demon of Fate's Design gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the sacrificed enchantment's mana value. We got Destiny Spinner for 1 and a green. It is a 2/3. Creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. For 3 and a green, target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It's still land. Got Doomwake Giant for 4 and a black. It's a 4/6 Constellation. Whenever Doomwake Giant or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. We have Eidolon of Blossoms for 2 and 2 green. It is a 2/2 with Constellation. Whenever Eidolon of Blossoms or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you get to draw a card. Got Herald of the Pantheon for 1 and a green. It is a 2/2. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life. We got Jukai Naturalist for a green and a white. It is a 2/2 with lifelink. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Got Mesa Enchantress. It is 1 and 2 white for a 0/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. We got Ondu Spirit Dancer for 4 and a white. It is a 3/3. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may create a token that is a copy of it. You may only do this once per turn. We have Sanctum Weaver for 1 and a green. It is a 0/2. You can tap it to add X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is the number of enchantments you control. We've got Setsuki the Living Lore for green and white. It is a 1/3. You can tap it to put a lore counter on each saga you control, activate only as a sorcery, and when Setsuki Living Lore dies, choose up to 1 to return target saga or enchantment creature you control to its owner's hand, or to return target saga card from your graveyard to your hand. We've got Satyr Enchanter for 1, a green, and a white. It is a 2/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. We got Scholar of the New Horizons for 1 and a white. It is a 1/1. Scholar of New Horizons enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. You can tap it to remove a counter from a permanent you control, to search your library for a plains card and reveal it. If an opponent controls more lands than you, you may put that card onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put it onto the battlefield, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Got Setessan Champion for 2 and a green. It's a 1/3 with Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on Setessan Champion and draw a card. Got Starfield Mystic for 1 and a white. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Starfield Mystic. We got Sithis Harvest's Hand for 1 green and 1 white. It is a 1/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain a life and draw a card. We got Verduran Enchantress for 1 and 2 green. It's a 0/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. And then finally we have Weaver of Harmony. It is 1 and a green for a 2/2. Other enchantment creatures you control get +1/+1. You may pay a green and tap it to copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an enchantment source. You may choose new targets for the copy. Okay, so those are the creatures. We're going to look at the instants. There are only 4 instants in here. Starting with Cosmic Rebirth. This is 1, a green, and a white. You get to choose target permanent card in your graveyard. If it has mana value 3 or less, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't put it onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. You gain 3 life. We have Mythos of Nethroi for 2 and a black. You can destroy target non-land permanent if it's a creature, or if you paid green and a white. You can Path to Exile. It costs 1 white. Exile target creature. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. And then we have Swords to Plowshares for 1 white. Exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. Okay, next up is Sorceries. Starting with Brilliant Restoration. This is 3 and 4 white. Return all artifact and enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. We have Eerie Ultimatum for 2 white, 3 black, and 2 green. Return any number of permanent cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. We have Farseek for 1 and a green. Search your library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card. Put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. We have Kodama's Reach for 2 and a green. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and 1 into your hand, and then shuffle. We have Nature's Lore for 1 and a green. Search your library for a forest card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. And then we have Resurgent Belief. This one has Suspend for 2, where you pay 1 and a white, and you return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Next up we have Artifacts. There are only 3 artifacts in here. Starting with Arcane Signet. It costs 2. You can tap it to add 1 of your commander's color identity. We have Power Conduit. Costs 2. You can tap it to remove a counter from a permanent you control, to either put a charge counter on an artifact, or to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. We have Soul Ring. It costs 1. You can tap it for 2 colorless. Next up, we have Enchantments. And there are quite a few enchantments, obviously. We have a ton of sagas in here. Starting with Azusa's Many Journeys. For 1 and a green, Chapter 1 says you may play an additional land this turn. Chapter 2 says you gain 3 life. Chapter 3 says you exile this saga and return it to the battlefield. Transformed as Likeness of the Seeker. It's a 3/3. Whenever it becomes blocked, you get to untap up to 3 lands you control. Okay, we got Battle at the Hell Vault. 4 and 2 white. Chapter 1 and 2 say for each player, exile up to 1 target non-saga, non-land permanent that player controls until Battle at the Hell Vault leaves the battlefield. And for Chapter 3, you get to create Avacyn, a legendary 8/8 white angel creature token with flying, vigilance, and indestructible. We've got Battle for Bredegard. This is 1, a green and a white. Chapter 1 says create a 1/1 human warrior creature token. Chapter 2 says create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. And Chapter 3 says choose any number of artifact tokens and or creature tokens you control with different names. For each of them, create a token that is a copy of it. We've got Binding of the Old Gods for 2, a black and a green. Chapter 1 says destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls. Chapter 2 says search your library for a forest card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. And Chapter 3 says creatures you control gain death touch until end of turn. We've got Elspeth Conquers Death for 3 and 2 white. Chapter 1 says exile target permanent an opponent controls with converted mana cost of 3 or greater. Chapter 2 says non-creature spells your opponents cast cost 2 more to cast until end of turn. And Chapter 3 says return target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a +1/+1 counter or a loyalty counter on it. Got Elspeth's Nightmare for 2 and a black. Chapter 1 says destroy target creature an opponent controls with power 2 or less. Chapter 2 says target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature non-land card from it. That player discards that card. And Chapter 3 says exile target opponent's graveyard. Got Enchantress's Presence for 2 and a green. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. We have Fall of Gil-galad. Chapter 1 says scry 2. Chapter 2 says put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. And Chapter 3 says until end of turn, target creature you control gains. When this creature dies, draw 2 cards. Then that creature fights up to 1 other target creature. We have Fall of the Imposter for 1 and a green and a white. Chapters 1 and 2 says put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. Chapter 3 says exile a creature with the greatest power among creatures target opponent controls. We have Firja's Retribution for 1, 2 white, and a black. For 1, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. For 2, until end of turn, angels you control gain tap, destroy target creature with power less than this creature's power. And for 3, angels you control gain double strike until end of turn. Got Historian's Boon for 3 and a white. Whenever Historian's Boon or another non-token enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you get to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control triggers, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. We've got Love Song of Night and Day for 2 and a white. Chapter 1, you and target opponent each draw 2 cards. Chapter 2, create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying. Chapter 3, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. We've got Michiko's Reign of Truth for 1 and a white. Chapters 1 and 2 say target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Chapter 3 says exile the saga and return it to the battlefield transformed. Into Portrait of Michiko. Portrait of Michiko gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Next up we have Oath of the Grey Host for 3 and a black. Chapter 1, you and target opponent each create a food token. Chapter 2, each opponent loses 3 life, create a treasure token. And Chapter 3 says create 3 tapped 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. Got Seal of Cleansing for 1 and a white. You can sacrifice Seal of Cleansing to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Got Seal of Primordium for 1 and a green. You can sacrifice Seal of Primordium to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Got Sigil of the Empty Throne for 3 and 2 white. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. We have Spirit Sister's Call for 3, a white and a black. At the beginning of your end step, choose target permanent card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with the chosen card. If you do, return the chosen card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains. If this permanent would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Starfield of Nyx says 4 and a white. Is 4 and a white, and says at the beginning of your upkeep you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield as long as you control 5 or more enchantments. Each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and toughness, each equal to its mana value. Got Sterling Grove for 1 green and 1 white. Other enchantments you control have Shroud, and for 1 you can sacrifice Sterling Grove to search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, then shuffle and put it on top. We have Tale of Tenuviel for 3 and 2 white. Target creature you control gains indestructible for as long as you control Tale of Tenuviel. For 2, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and for Chapter 3, up to 2 target creatures you control each gain lifelink until end of turn. Got Cruelty of Gix for 3 and 2 black. Chapter 1, target opponent reveals their hand. Choose a creature or planeswalker card from it. That player discards that card. Chapter 2, search your library for a card. Put that card into your hand, then shuffle. You lose 3 life. And Chapter 3, put target creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. We have Eldest Reborn for 4 and a black. Chapter 1, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Chapter 2, each opponent discards a card. Chapter 3, put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Got the First Eroan Games for 2 and a green. Chapter 1, create a 1/1 white human soldier. 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Chapter 2, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. Chapter 3, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw 2 cards. And Chapter 4, create a gold token. We have the Mending of Dominaria for 3 and 2 green. Chapters 1 and 2 say mill 2 cards, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And Chapter 3 says return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then shuffle your graveyard into your library. We have Restoration of Eiganjo for 2 and a white. Chapter 1, search your library for a basic plains card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Chapter 2, you may discard a card. When you do, return a permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And Chapter 3, exile the saga and return it transformed as Architect of Restoration. 3/4 with Vigilance. When Architect of Restoration attacks or blocks, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. We have War in Heaven, 3 and 3 black. Chapter 1, draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. Chapter 2, mill 3 cards. And Chapter 3, choose up to 3 target creature cards with total mana value 8 or less in your graveyard. Return each of them to the battlefield with a Necrodermis counter on it. Their artifacts in addition to their other types. We have the Weatherseed Treaty for 2 and a green. It has read ahead. For Chapter 1, search your library for a basic land, put that onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Chapter 2, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. And Chapter 3, Domain, target creature you control gets +X/+X and gains trample until end of turn, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. We have the World Spell for 5 and 2 green, also has read ahead. Chapter 1 and 2 say look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-saga permanent from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then Chapter 3 says put up to 2 non-saga permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. And then we have War of the Last Alliance. For 3 and a white. Chapters 1 and 2 say search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And then Chapter 3 says creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn. The ring tempts you. Okay, next up is Planeswalkers. We only have one. The obvious choice here, Calyx Destiny's Hand for 2, a green and a white. Enters with 4 loyalty. Its +1 is to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment card from among them. Put that card into your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. For -3, you get to exile target creature or enchantment you don't control until target enchantment you do control leaves the battlefield. And for -7, you can return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, next up we're going to take a look at non-basic lands. Okay, we start with Bountiful Promenade, which is the crowd land for green-white. We have Branchloft Pathway, which is the MDFC for green-white. We have Bright Climb Pathway, which is the MDFC for white-black. We have Canopy Vista, which is a check land for green-white that has land types. We have Command Tower, which taps for your commander's color identity. We have Darkboar Pathway, which is the MDFC for green-black. We have Exotic Orchard, which taps for whatever mana your opponent's lands tap for. We have Hall of Heliod's Generosity, which taps for colorless, and you can pay one and a white and tap it to put target enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library. We have Indotha Triome, which is the Triome for white, black, green that can cycle and also has land types. We have Isolated Chapel, which is the white, black check land. We have Karn's Bastion that taps for colorless, or you can tap 4 and it to proliferate. We have Necroblossom Snarl, which is a reveal land for green-black. We have Nesting Grounds, which taps for colorless. You can pay 1 and tap it to move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent, activate only as a sorcery. We have Reliquary Tower, which taps for colorless and says you have no maximum hand size. We have Sandstep Citadel, which is the Triome that enters the battlefield tapped for white, black, and green. We have Shine Shadow Snarl, which is the reveal land for white-black. We have Sun Petal Grove, which is the check land for green-white. We have Undergrowth Stadium, which is the crowd land for black-green. We have Vault of Champions, which is the crowd land for black-green. And we have Woodland Cemetery, which is the check land for green-black. And then lastly, we have basic lands. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 forests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plains, and 1, 2, 3 swamps. So that is the Narci Enchantress deck tech. Mainly we're trying to get the sagas in play and then use Narci's ability to drain the table for the CMC, then reoccur the sagas, and we have many different ways in here to speed up the sagas so that we can sacrifice them earlier, just in case our opponents try to get cheeky and start destroying enchantments. Again, though, enchantments are pretty sticky. A lot of people don't run enchantment destruction, though I think that it should become a bigger thing. But yeah, that is Narci Fable Singer. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below, but let's keep it positive. I'll remove any negative comments. And that's it, guys. Until next time. Peace.